And there's Scott and Jessica. And Gina's with us this morning.
Good morning.
Gina, how are you? Scott, Jessica.
Morning, everyone. Great.
Sun is shining. Yeah.
Look at Andrew.
And the two happiest guys in Scott County are named J.R. Brandenburg and Robert Bruin.
Oh, boy. Bless their hearts.
Hope they're getting some well-deserved rest.
Well-deserved rest. And boy, Scott, I know what JR does because I spent 16 years over there watching him. And I know what Robert does. And once again, Judge, I called Robert to check on just how the crews were doing. And it sounded like he was fumbling with his phone a little bit. And it turned out he was driving a plow. And he had sent the driver home to get some sleep before he came back and worked that day.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of leader you need.
That's the kind of leadership that we have that'll get in the trenches and knows how to do it and is willing to do it. So, and JR is the same way. So, well, enough of that. Why don't we go ahead and call our meeting to order, Scott?
Okay.
Jessica, roll call if you'd let the records reflect that that Dr. Hub has a proxy here. And let's see. Oh, thank you, Scott. I'm operating, or Andrew, whoever gave me the courtesy of the agenda in front of us. I'm operating without a written copy in front of me right now. Each of you should have a copy of the minutes of our last meeting. If there are no corrections or additions, is there a motion for approval of those?
I reviewed those and would like to make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, ma'am. If there are no questions about the minutes, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Scott, I'll let you move forward with office relocation project updates.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have been in touch with the general contractor. They have indicated they have lost 2 to 3 days last week due to the weather. There was also an issue with the alarm vendor who's going to be coming in, putting in our security measures. They apparently were scheduled several times to come to the new office and install the equipment, and they never showed any of those times. Subsequently, this morning, after I got that update, the alarm vendor showed up here wanting to install our security upgrades. And so I sent them down to the new location. So hopefully that piece of it will be resolved over the next couple of days. But the latest update is probably mid-March with some of the both supply chain delays that they've experienced in getting some of the materials due to the weather and their own inability to get out and come do the work. So those are primarily the office updates. I do have, can you all see the PowerPoint here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ignore this date here, 2/4, that they forgot to update that. But this is basically, most of last week was lost due to the weather, as we can all relate to. These are some of the work that's going on. I can tell you that ceiling work, the grid install, that's been quite a large project for them. They kind of found a mess when they got up above that, and some things had to be fixed. But the electrical and data work is ongoing. You can see here, this is some of the ceiling tiles and some of the grid work there. There were actually some actual holes in that ceiling that they had to repair, but that's kind of coming along, as you can see. We do have some fixtures up in the restrooms. And then that's our rack in the server room for the data cabling and the VoIP phone system. So we are moving along. We are making progress. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be over there at 8 a.m. Spectrum is going to meet me between 8 and 9. I don't know how long it's going to take once they're there, but we're going to set up our two phone lines separate from the VoIP system, which will be our dedicated fax line and our alarm system line. So that will hopefully be taken care of tomorrow as well. So unless you have any questions, that's pretty much all that there is to report currently. I'll know more when I get over there tomorrow and get eyes on it and see how much progress has been made on the security system, which is in progress.
Good. Scott, my experience with projects of this type is the completion date is always 2 weeks away. Two more weeks.
Well, there's a lot of variables involved in these things, so I had no illusions going into it. So
Okay, well, thank you for that update, and I know you all are excited about the possibility.
very much so.
Okay, item 5 on the agenda, Scott.
Okay, this is a request for PR submissions for each jurisdiction. What I'm requesting is that from each of the 3 jurisdictions, if you can connect me with someone in your respective organizations, what I'm looking for is essentially a photograph and a blurb on a project or projects, as many as you want to do, that were at least partially funded by occupational license tax dollars. And the genesis of this, if you'll recall, when I came back from Harvard, I mentioned that one of my classmates was a lady named Doris Akol. Doris is a tax attorney by trade, but she's currently the Commissioner General of the Uganda Revenue Authority in Africa. That's Uganda's version of the IRS, essentially. She runs that organization. And because that's a developing country, a lot of people, paying taxes is something very new in that country to them. So they've had a very successful public relations campaign. And you can see one of the slides she shared with us. I don't know if you remember this from September of 19, but because of you, and then they insert a particular project, and then thank you for paying your taxes. That's the tagline. In this case, it's a hospital with a maternal and neonatal healthcare unit. And then, there's the photos to go along with it. And then here's another one they did regarding electricity. All the districts in Uganda now have electricity. And again, thank you for paying your taxes because of you. To make that connection between the citizens and the taxpayers with the taxes they're paying and the good works that come from that. So I mentioned at the time, and I've always thought that this would be a good tool to use one of the tools we can use to better provide encouragement for voluntary compliance, which is one of the pillars of our strategic plan. I also included on the email I sent you some stats. I did some research over the course of the past year or so and looking into this, and apparently there is definitely a need. There's a link here if you want to look at this story from the National Education Association regarding civics education in public schools. And there's 3 bullet points here that just really kind of stuck out to me. The NEA is of the opinion that civics education is in crisis. They do not think that's an exaggeration to say that only 25% of the U.S. students reach the proficient standard on the NAAP civics assessment. And also, and I was operating under this mistaken belief, I thought that the problem was that it wasn't being taught. That's not true. It is being taught. In all 50 states, there's some form of civics or government, and nearly 90% of the students take at least one civics class. But the NEA has identified that they think part of the problem is there's no supplemental actual real life experience, no hands-on, no experience-based learning opportunities with community service to enforce that. So that's kind of why I included all that information. There was a method to my madness. So what I'd like to do is, if we can at some point get some materials together, I'd like to create something like this. Of course, the next step is we bring it back to the commission, have you review and make any changes. Not only would we use this in our website and our social media, but in the context of our new office space, I would like to have some of these blown up and framed to hang in the customer area of our new office space. So that's my thought process there, and that's why I'm asking for this today so that we can go ahead and start working on it.
I think that's a great way to promote the work of the Revenue Commission, Scott, because most people don't know who you are or what you do. And your anonymity might make it easy to ignore sometimes.
Right. And if they're standing in the customer area waiting to speak to us or file returns or register their business or write us a check, they're still not going to like writing the check, but it might make the connection that, okay, I don't like it, but I get it. I understand why this has to be done. And I can see tangible evidence of the good works that come from it.
Yeah, and the judge and I will have no problem, nor will the school system, in identifying very significant projects. Almost all of our general fund revenue comes through the Revenue Commission. The largest projects we've done in recent years, the 911 system, and our Lanes Run Business Park, city and the county funded with cash from our general funds. We can make this as big as we want it to, Scott.
Absolutely. And I'm just requesting one. If you want to do more than one, as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. So there you have it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6 looks like it's pretty specific.
Technical difficulties here. General discussion, yes. So there is one update. I did not have one piece of information when I sent this to you all on Friday, and that's the closed businesses for the month of January. But pretty much everything here is as it usually is. We've got the January collections here. You can see we're up about a little over 9%, 302,000 over last year for January. And then you can see the city, county, and school breakouts. They're all also up. You have here, stand by. I also, wrong screen, wanted to point out to you here, this is the December reimbursement on the financial inducement. And this is the December payment, which of course we paid in January, which is what we're talking about. We're down to the remaining 120,000 per jurisdiction. So we have already received the paperwork. And in fact, yesterday I processed the checks for that final payment for this fiscal year for this employer. So next month, you'll see one more of these, and then we'll go to our standard 2 months where we will not be making any disbursement payments. Nothing new there. I just wanted to let you know we're close to the finish line on that one for this particular year. We had 63 new businesses open in January. That is down a little bit from January 2020 by 6 businesses. But what was kind of surprising is we had 21 fewer businesses close in this month compared to January of 2020. So that was kind of an interesting piece. And I did also want to point out, up here, we're talking about the AB rotation. We're going to be going back to, we're going to put some additional protocols in place, but we're going to be going back to having everyone in the office between our quarantine in December and the weather this month and being on AB rotation. We're getting critically behind. And we've got to start, packing up and getting ready for the move. So we're going to put some additional protocols in place, spread people out a little bit more, but starting March 1, we're going to come off the AB rotation. Of course, we're still, because of the executive order, closed to the public, but we're going to get everybody back in and back up to speed. And with the additional protocols, we think that's appropriate at this time. Also, with the numbers statewide continuing to drop and the vaccinations going up, we think this is a good time to make the move. And we really need to make the move because of the backlog that's being created due to some of our recent events. Any questions on any of that? None of these require any board action. This is just for information.
Scott, on the it's a question about this, but it leads to a bigger question. Is when you've had to work on the AB rotation, I would assume with the status of our methodology of processing, it's hard for those people to be very productive at home.
Yes, that's true. And some of the other jurisdictions within COLA that I've talked about, everybody experiences productivity decreases either due to limited Wi-Fi capacity at home or just the slowness of the VPN that we're using to access. And Andrew had asked me for some information last week when I was working from home due to the weather. And I was able to access our tax database, but the lag was pretty pronounced. And that's with, the office being shut down on that particular day. So we didn't have anybody in the office working on it. People can access it in some cases from home like I was. So the lag is pretty pronounced, and that's really the biggest problem. Even if people have full access to everything they need digitally, just because of technology constraints, a lot of times they're just not going to be as productive as they normally would if they were here in the office.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done, I've got, in City Hall side, we've had a number of people work from home, and just given their setup, for example, Stacy Clark, I think has turned out more work since we sent her home last March than she did. She just did remarkable work from home. Uh, uh, are are there systems upgrades that the commissioners need to consider for your all's benefit, Scott, that would help that?
Yes, I'm putting together some data on that right now. One of the things that we need to talk about is a lockbox option, where a lot of, being paper-based and having to go to the post office and pick it up and open it. We've mentioned this before in past meetings. It's something we need to revisit and look at. I've talked to Lexington and Louisville. They're both doing it with a tremendous degree of success, even up to the point in Louisville where the lockbox operator actually keys the data into the tax system, so that when the people do show up, whether they're working remotely or they show up in the office, they're immediately beginning to do things that are more revenue generating as opposed to shuffling paper. Paper that ultimately has to be filed, and paper that ultimately will have to be pulled out and discarded in alignment with state record retention requirements. So that antiquated process would go a long way to us being able to be, even given the constraints that I mentioned before, that's just draining a ton of our time. And, we have tax compliance analysts. That's the actual job title of the people doing most of this work. They're not spending much time analyzing anything because they're doing a lot of very mundane paperwork that could definitely be streamlined. I've actually got some preliminary costs from some of those other jurisdictions as well. The constraint we're going to have is we have a very old, antiquated tax system, which we all know about. That's a different piece. The big question on that is, would they be able to offer the same service and key in the information so that we can initially, when we get in at 8 o'clock, hit the ground running and start doing more revenue generating activities, whether that's auditing or analyzing the returns, the payroll returns, things of that nature, working on special projects that could potentially create additional revenue. That's the big question mark. And Jessica and I have a meeting hopefully this week or next with the database developer to talk about that. But even if we could just, if they could do everything up to the point where we'd get an electronic file and we could just key in off of that versus dealing with all the paper, that would be fantastic. That would be a big win for us. Plus, we wouldn't have to deal with all the paper, because in all the scenarios from the jurisdictions I've spoken to, the paper never comes into the revenue agency. It's digitized, it's saved for a certain amount of time. It's redundantly saved on our backups, so we can always access it and print it when we need to. So over time, we would eventually, for the most part, age out of our file cabinets, because as the state record retention requirements, we go through that process in approximately 3 years. We wouldn't have very much paper in the office after that. So that's something we're looking at. We've also talked about in prior meetings, just due to the growth that we've seen, and we talked about this last month, continuing to have 922 new businesses open. I think it's time to have the discussion again about perhaps adding another tax analyst on top of that. Those two things would probably kick us up into the stratosphere in terms of streamlining our operations.
Good. It does seem when you describe tax analysts doing data entry, it does seem like a lot of horsepower that might be channeled in more productive directions. Because boy, you all would be. I'm sure that today you're awash in paper.
Yes,
and
very much so. Very much so. And when I talked with the director at Louisville Metro, she shared that, when they went to this a year or two ago, that the main concern with the powers that be there was that, well, you're not going to be laying people off, are you? And she said, oh no, the purpose of this is not to reduce headcount. the purpose of this is to redirect your headcount into doing things that are not mundane, that can be done by a third party or digitized to a certain extent, to where they're analyzing, they're using their brains to look at these returns to make sure that they're accurate, and to do the necessary compliance checks that it would just open up a whole new world to us for projects that we've been talking about for a long time, but we've never had the luxury of going after them. So it's very, very exciting that we could potentially kick off some of those projects and just get caught up and stay caught up on our normal analyst reviews.
Yeah, I agree, Scott. I think the commission would get excited about that for you. You all have made such strides in rebuilding the Revenue Commission, and on many of your reports, we're getting much more sophisticated and meaningful data now. If we can continue that evolution by getting rid of some of those paper processes for you, we've been exposed to lockbox operations for years and years, then it seemed like they would work well for you. So I'm encouraged that you're gathering that data, and I'm going to bet you'll find a very receptive commission when you can bring all that to us.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And I know that my team here would appreciate that. And I'm confident, given the support you've given us thus far, that I knew you'd be very receptive to that. And it's these changes and the additional information we're able to give you. It couldn't happen without your support and the support of Andrew as well. And of course, bringing Jessica on board was just a real game changer as well. So
good. Judge Gina, anything on any of those topics or others you'd like to mention?
Think we're good.
Okay. Thank you. Scott, Jessica, anything that you all have additionally today?
I do not. Jessica, you have anything I've forgotten?
No, just that, just as an update, am I muted? No, okay. Just as an update, we did resolve the taxpayer issue and we received that settlement and it was processed, and you all should have gotten that yesterday, the deposit, which was that large settlement. So that has been resolved.
Congratulations, Jessica. You helped guide us to a good outcome there.
I'm certainly glad that it's not in my area anymore. I've taken it back to the current files and it's one off of the list.
Good for you.
And most importantly, the money's in the bank.
The money is in the bank. That's right. We can all kind of feel good about that one. If there's nothing else, Scott, it looks like we have our next meeting on March 24th.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I'd like to make the motion for adjournment.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay. And we'll vote with our exit button.